Hey everybody, so I thought I would do a little bit of a different style of video here. We're in that time of year where we're waiting to repot, waiting to start seed. You could start doing some pruning maybe in some cases, but it's a really good time to think through the design concepts that we're gonna mess with in the coming year. And so I thought that I took a couple pictures of some of my trees. I'm going to just do one tree in this video and see how it goes. But I'll be on the iPad here, and so I'll switch over to the iPad screen and have me maybe down in the corner giving some commentary as I walk through some of the thoughts that I have. So this is a Korean hornbeam bought from a local bonsai nursery in 2022. Twisted Nature Bonsai in Louisville, Kentucky. Russ is the guy who operates that. Very cool little tree, and as you can see, has been cultivated to be a bonsai from a pretty early age. Just in case I said as you can see, maybe you can't see. So the reason why I say that is the branches on the left-hand side here, this one here, and this one here, they're coming out on the outside of a curve, which is cool. The tree has been moved into a bonsai pot. It's not in a nursery can anymore. And it had been pruned to try and start the process of development. Now, I have done a good bit of work on it in the last year, including cutting off some of the branches and trimming things up. So I think at the moment, I maybe would like to talk through what I consider to be the front and the back at this point, and maybe an alternate front, and maybe we rethink our decision making here. So this is what I have as the front here, and as I'm looking through this, I'm kind of going off the principles that Ryan Neal uses with his in Mirai Live and other I think probably online on YouTube as well, and some of the free content. That you're trying to balance this thing of the base of the tree, the movement of the tree, and any features that the tree has. And in Ryan's case, he has some trees with some crazy features, things like deadwood and things like that. In this case, we're thinking mostly, I think, about the base of the tree, the root flare where it meets the soil, and the movement of the tree. In this case, I haven't repotted this yet, so I don't have a super clear picture of what the base exactly looks like, but it was fairly radial in appearance. So for the most part, I'm thinking about where the movement of the trunk line is. So if I change my color here to something maybe a little more visible, let's see, let's try like this bright green. So as we follow the trunk line here, let's change it to that. As we follow the trunk line here, we could just follow and see the movement of this. Now, if I snap out here, I'm going to back up and go over to and I might have the back and the front pictures mixed up, which is actually fine. It's actually a good example of let's rethink what we're doing here. And I think I actually do. I believe this is my proposed current front. But in any case, it doesn't matter. So I'm thinking about the movement as I look through the picture. So here we've got pretty good movement, and it kind of sways back and forth through that. So to weigh this one against an alternate front that I'm proposing, which of those two has the better movement? So as I look here, a couple of things that I'm noticing is I'm noticing that the way when this is turned like this branch appears to be coming from the inside of a curve. That's typically not something that we want. I do like some of the visibility to the curve and the drama of the curve up here as compared to the other front. That's something to kind of be aware of. This branch is now coming ever so slightly out to the front as opposed to straight to the side. So that's something to think about. And don't worry about these crazy branches, up top here. Don't worry about those. I'm going to come back to those in a few minutes. But right now we're just trying to evaluate what we think the front should be. So this is my alternate front, and so I'm going to go and pop over to, I think, actually what I was calling the back on here. And let's get rid of the let's get rid of all this green here. You all can tell me what you think. I think, again, now the difference between these, if you pay attention to the angle of the pot, this one's kind of like straight on, so it's coming straight out at us. Whereas if we pop over to the alternate front, I kind of did a slight angle. So again, I like the more developed movement up top, but I do think that overall I prefer the loss of movement up top. I like this branch here kind of interrupting things. It's the view, it isn't such a linear view of the trunk. There is a little bit of an interruption to kind of keep pulling us back down to the trunk and keep us in the design rather than up and out. I like that this branch's origination here appears to be a little more on the outside of a curve. It's not perfect, and this one too, this branch here too, it has a little bit better visual origination there. So I think overall I'm going to go with this as the proposed front, at least for the next little bit. So if we're going to do that, let's work off of this. And the first thing that I'll do, I'm going to do a couple of things to get us to a point where we can start imagining the tree a little bit more in it's more closer to its final form. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a spray thing here. I'm going to steal the color. And I'm just going to get rid of this pot visually here. And I'm going to replace it with, let's pick out like a nice kind of light blue, light blue gray. How about that? And I think I don't want that. I want to change it maybe to we'll go back to the pencil here. So with this, I'm thinking, and I have a pot that kind of looks like this, that I'll put it in a pot that's closer to something like this size, just to help give you a sense of what this tree might end up looking like. So that immediately makes the tree look larger, more impressive, all those other things. So that's one thing. Eventually, once we're past the point of just pure straight development, we're into the point of refinement, a smaller pot's going to slow it down, and it's also going to help the look of it. The other thing you might have noticed is, let me change brushes here, is these branches up here at the top that are really, really long and spindly. So those, at this point, again, let me switch. Sorry, I keep switching tools here. It's the first time I'm just figuring this process out. So what the goal of these branches here is to provide some extra thickening to the entirety of the trunk, and in particular to this branch here and its connection here, and also to this here. So it won't really provide. Sorry, get the eraser out. It won't thicken that up. The goal here is to thicken this area that I've highlighted green. And so in the process of doing that, all of this down here will also get an additional layer of thickness. So the trunk will continue to get a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. And it will also, I have several sites up mostly on the back side here that have a couple of open wounds. And the more resources that get pulled this way up past there, and then when in the fall, when it comes back down, when the more resources that are coming up again to these branches up here, these big spindly ones, the more of a healing effect we're going to have on the wound that is in the back there. So let's go ahead and get rid of all of our green here. And what I'll show you is I'm going to switch brushes. Go to the color here. Eventually, once we get the level of thickness that we want in the upper branches, we're going to come and we're going to just get rid of these. And so the design decision comes, okay, so now we're shortened back. Suddenly, do we want, how tall of a tree do we want this to end up being? One option would be to take this off back to something like that, or even further, back to maybe a bud in here. And at that point, then, we switch up our pencil here, and maybe this becomes a little bit of the apex here, in through here, and grow that out, and develop the ramification. And then maybe we have some ramification here, or maybe we decide between either the branch I'm working on here or the one down here, and maybe we get rid of one of those. So if we switch it up back to this, and let's shrink the size down, maybe we say, actually at this point, this branch up here is too thick, and so we want to just completely edit this branch out. And now we've got a tree with a new apex, a lot more space to develop branches down below. Another option, I'm not trying to overwhelm here, but these are the thoughts that are going through my mind constantly this time of year when I don't have anything else that I can do with the trees. Maybe we take and we actually get rid of all of this stuff, and we come back to this branch as our new apex. And so then over time, we develop this into some secondary branches. And suddenly this becomes the apex. Another thing that we're trying to start to wrap our minds around is the silhouette of what the tree is going to end up being. And so again, I keep changing brushes on you, but that's the life of an artist. Eventually, my anticipation would be that these branches are going to get pulled back to something like that. This branch will probably get pulled back to something like this. And then suddenly you can see as we start to shrink the canopy and the branch length in, over time the tree starts to look larger. The trunk starts to look larger relative to the branches. This tree, as I have it here, is probably only maybe 8 to 10 inches tall total. You could very easily turn this into a shohin of some sort. It's got really cool bark because it's been developed as a bonsai. It's been grown really slowly in a container, which is great. Shout out Russ for that. But these are some of the options that you have to think through as you're evaluating the design. So one thing I'll point out, a structural flaw that existed when I got the tree and I helped to further make worse or to exacerbate, is the big thick branch on the right hand side of the tree is it's way too thick. So I'm talking about this branch here. The only two options you have, one is to cut it off. If it's just too thick, you got to cut it off, and I don't know what, you start from something closer back. But the other option is to grow and thicken everything else to the point that it is the big branch is proportionate. So just to step back up to the upper canopy that we had earlier, the long spindly branches. So I'll go ahead and just I'll toggle this layer off so we can see the original tree. So the big branches up top, the big long branches, those are there to mainly provide thickening and to provide wound healing. So that if you let a branch run, if you leave it in place, it promotes development, it promotes thickening, it promotes all those things. If you cut a branch back, like what I have done, like what I have done down here, that will force it in a deciduous tree especially, it'll force it to produce buds further back, branching further back. But most importantly, you have stopped the abrupt thickening of that piece, at least for the time being. So this is how we build taper. You get a point of thickness, you cut back, you let it grow out again, you cut back to the medium thickness, and then over time, so you start here, and this branch was like this, right? And so then I take it and I cut it back here, and then I let this grow out here again. I come back and I eliminate this here, cut this off, let this thicken, let this thicken, let this thicken, come back, cut that off, and then start developing some secondary ramification, something like that. So that's the theory here. Again, this branch is very, very thick. It was partially like that when I got it, and I exacerbated it through my letting these tips grow too long when I was learning. We're all learning. But at this point, I'm going to let it roll, and I'm going to look at it as a feature. I'm going to look at it as I'll work with it and see what happens. At some point in the process, though, just to toggle the layer back on, at some point in the process, I'm going to move it into a smaller pot, just like the one we have here. I really like that color. So this has a pretty dark green foliage, classic hornbeam, the Japanese hornbeam, so this is Carpinus japonica, has a larger leaf than the Korean hornbeam, which is, depending on, it's Carpinus turksana or Koreana, depending on where and when and whether people are using old terminology or new. It tends to have a larger leaf. The Japanese hornbeam, which is this, has a larger leaf than the Korean hornbeam. But it will shrink down over time. It grows very vigorously. It's really cool. The leaves are really cool looking. They get this almost like metallic texture to them. I can't describe it exactly. It's behind the color, or it's other than the color. Really beautiful foliage. Again, this is kind of the idea of where I think I'm headed with the development of the tree. To toggle back on, this is where I am now at this point. And so in the next year, I'm probably going to keep it in this pot because I want the upper branches to keep growing. I may consider, depending on how fast things are thickening, I may prune back after the first flush of growth has hardened off sometime in the summer. I can keep you updated on that. But overall, my goal here is to get the branches to the thickness that I want them, cut back to the spot where I would like for the main structure of the branch to end, and then just start the process of developing ramification through doing things like fall pruning at leaf drop to get back to the nodes we want to grow to, and then doing a series of prunes across the growing season to try to push the growth back and also get more light into the canopy. And those are things I can talk about once we get to that point of the year. But I hope this is like a helpful structure. This is just kind of how I'm thinking through it, and I wanted to do this on the iPad, and so I thought that I would show you what I'm thinking about, and hopefully it gets you thinking about some of your trees, and maybe going out and taking some pictures and playing around on your phone or your tablet or whatever. So take care, and I will see you in the next video.